Hello, I'm Matt Carpenter, and this is the Good Life Podcast. Hello, this is Matt Carpenter, and this is the Good Life Podcast. I am thankful today to have the opportunity to interview Ryan Anderson. Ryan is a writer, and he has a wonderful story about his, the way that his life has moved over the last several months. So, Ryan, thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me on.
So I first came across your work when I was reading on Twitter. I lurk on that website. I don't use it for posting very much, but there are people that I'm interested in hearing what they have to say. And you came across, I don't remember how, I think someone had retweeted something you said, and it was interesting to me. So I followed you in what began with, you were on the West Coast, but you spoke very highly of a region that I've appreciated for many years now, New England. So just in your writing, you write about the New England states with a love that communicates more than just the abstract, oh, it's real pretty over there, as we say. So just talk about what is it that drew you at the time from where you lived in the West to that area of Upper New England.
Yeah, well, the easiest answer there is that I grew up there, right? I mean, I grew up in rural Vermont at the end of a dirt road. And like so many people my age and of my generation, I was encouraged to leave. That was the old Dr. Seuss line, all the places you go,
right.
All the places you'll go, yeah. And so there's a huge pressure, I think, for people of my generation, people now in their mid-30s, to have gone to college and to get some white-collar skills. But it turns out there aren't very many white-collar jobs in Vermont, or at least in rural Vermont. Maybe you find that in Burlington or what have you. But in any case, so I went looking for those, and it took me about 10 years of being away to realize that I wanted to be back. And I was homesick the entire time because my family was back in Vermont. We had just had our little girl at the start of COVID in 2020, and I knew that was where I wanted to raise her, and my wife was on board. She loves history, she's a historian, and she loves the natural world, and it was a good fit. So that is really what drew me back, is that sense of home, that sense of community, the family, and the natural world.
So what was the process like then? I know from experience, going from one side of the continent to another is not an easy thing.
No.
So just to talk about how did you go about your move from the West Coast to the East Coast? Now, of course, I realize you could say, well, I packed a truck. So that's not exactly what I'm asking here. But just what did you do? And you say, I want to be back where I'm from. But you can't just snap your fingers. So there were things you went through. So talk about that.
Definitely. You're right, because it's not as simple as just packing a truck. Especially after a decade of being there and now having a wife and a child, and having a decade of accumulated possessions and things that you want to bring with you. When I moved out there, I had my rusty old Subaru Forester and maybe $300 in my checking account, and I just drove across country and made it work. But when I when needed to come back, it definitely was more complicated than that. One thing that was important for me and my wife was making sure that I had a job lined up before we returned. We really wanted to make sure that the income was going to be there. And one of the benefits of COVID, as I'm sure everyone knows, is that remote work became more of the norm. So I was able to get a job while I was still on the West Coast that was back in Vermont, working remotely, and with the understanding that I'd be moving back. So my employer was really generous in that regard. So once we had that lined up, we packed a container, or we packed a one of those big 32-foot long trailer containers, and had it shipped over and put everything in the storage unit while we were looking for a house. So the whole process probably took about a year, and from getting the job and saying yes, I will be moving back, to actually then 4 months later actually moving back, in the process selling our house on the West Coast, and landing back in Vermont in April. So so the timeline really is get the job in December, in that process between December and April, sell our house, which was a saga in itself. Because that's also when the Fed raised the interest rates too, right. So that made things a little bit more challenging. And then once we're back, landing at my family's home with our daughter and my wife and all of our stuff in a storage unit, trying to figure out what the next step was in terms of us buying a house or renovating the family home into a larger multi-family home, which that could have been fun, but of course there are no tradesmen now, right? So we did find a little cottage nearby my parents, about 4 miles away, and it was truly a blessing to be able to just grab that and put a aggressive offer on it, because again, as there very little housing out there, so we had to be aggressive in everything we did.
Right.
From aggressively sell our house, aggressively buy a new house, choose a moving company, all these things. It really has been a year of just like sheer, I can only use the word aggression. Just, it was such a high impact, just bam, 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 bam. You just had to keep going and make these big moves in everything you did. So that's really what the process was like. It was, and my little girl handled it really well. She loved packing up all the things into the moving truck and, waving as our car got carted away across the country and everything else. And we had a cat. We have a cat too, so we flew him across the country, and he did great during that. He only had one accident, and everyone around me seemed to not really mind. So. It was all right.
Good.
But quite the process, and then we're there a year later.
We just acquired a cat ourselves about almost 6 months ago, and it's been an act. So I was the most concerned about that, somewhat because of allergies, but also just because I did not know what it would do to the general mood of our home. And she has significantly, the mood was not bad before, but she has lightened it even more. And it's really, I would not change anything about it. Just something as simple as having a pet.
Yeah.
So
they add a little bit of movement to the landscape of a home that I think is important. Some friends and I, years and years ago, rented a house for Thanksgiving for like a Friendsgiving kind of getaway, and nobody had a pet, and I was like, what is missing about this meetup? What is missing about this house that we have for this weekend? And I realized that there was no animal there to add a little bit of dynamism to the movement of the whole scene. So yeah, I hear you. They definitely give us more benefits than we realize.
So part of what I've appreciated about your online persona is that you don't involve yourself in spats, in arguments, but instead you display radical gratitude. Just gratitude all the time, which I know does not come. No one, I would say, is naturally grateful. And I'm sure you don't feel grateful all the time. If you do, please go ahead and sell that secret because people will buy. But how do you cultivate that gratitude? Because it is as we talked about earlier before we started recording, it's not your following is not something that you have tried to build or grow, but people appreciate what you say, and part of it is your regular expression of gratitude and calling other people to it. So talk about how do you cultivate that?
Oh my goodness. Well, you're right. I think that there wasn't really a intentionality about building the following. I'm really a pretty average guy at the end of a dirt road, who just deeply loves his family and his home. So how does one cultivate gratitude for those things, about the natural world, about one's home, about little traditions and everything like that? I think part of it is going out and observing them, right? I think part of my following on Twitter right now is every morning I go outside and just write a brief reflection about the seasons and about where we are in the year, about what's coming and things like that. So right now, it's the 16th. I'm writing a lot about the solstice and how the light's returning and how the days are the darkest they are going to get all year right now, right? We are in the approach to the solstice. There's just this absolute darkness, come 4 o'clock in the afternoon where I live. So being able to be outside in the natural world and to just observe it, to really perceive it, to be thinking about it deliberately. And, that's not just walking through the woods and being like, this is, as you said earlier, it's real pretty out there. But rather an intentionality of thinking about what you see out there and what it might symbolize to you. There's about a week ago I was thinking about the large fir tree outside my house and how it really embodies the sense of evergreen endurance, not only in the winter when it's frigid, but in the summer too, and how it does not change. And so there's a lesson there, how we can embody our own evergreen endurance and how nothing really truly dies. And so going out and reflecting on the natural world, I think, naturally lends itself to that gratitude you speak of. And it helps that I'm in such a beautiful place. Vermont is a strikingly beautiful place. It is a place where the natural world is being actively conserved, and the environment is being kept up by the people and the policies here, and that is, that's not an accident, right? That doesn't just happen accidentally. It's a very deliberate choice by everyone here. So that helps. How does one maintain gratitude? It helps to it helps that I'm not constantly bombarded by pollution or light pollution or noise pollution or ugly things. And I mean, to a certain extent, I have to kind of criticize myself here that it's incredibly easy to be grateful when you're constantly surrounded by things that are easy to be grateful for, right?
Sure, but probably everyone, or I'll say at least in the United States. I can't speak for people in other parts of the world, but in the U.S., everyone, even if you don't have it in your backyard, there's beauty you can immerse yourself in somewhere nearby. You know, if it's in
That's fair.
for us in South Alabama or Southern Alabama, it's called the Wiregrass region. So they don't have the same terrain as that we do in North Alabama, where there's a lot more hills and such. But there is a type of beauty that's there that is different than what's here. Now, look, I'm much more a mountain person. I love mountains and hills, and so that draws me. But I think part of what you're talking about is giving that you give yourself to the beauty around you.
I think that's fair, right? And I think you're onto something there, because it is intentional, right? You do have to intentionally cultivate that sense of wonder and that sense of optimism, and choosing to be grateful. One of my buddies on Twitter likes to say that, this thing is good, but like all good things, you have to choose it, right?
Yes.
And so, like just like out west, right? Yes, the Seattle region constantly gets lambasted in the media for having a very visible homelessness crisis, and the traffic's terrible, and the housing's unaffordable, and everything else. And yeah, you can choose to look at that, and those are real problems that need to be addressed. But at the same time, you have outrageous access to public lands that the state parks out there rival the national parks on the east side of
Yes.
the country. You can go to a place like Deception Pass State Park, and it's practically as good as Acadia National Park in Maine. It's just there is a true intentionality and deciding what one focuses on. You can either choose to be looking at the needles in the gutter, and which one should at some point, and decide to do something about it. But if that's all what you focus on, then that's all you're going to see. And sometimes maybe you have to look up.
Right. Every place has decay. You can find decay if that's what you look for. I'm sure that the people in Vermont are not more naturally grateful than the people anywhere else, unless they cultivate it. So that is something that I, again, just for one who looks for the good and who chooses to be as much as possible a steward of the decay, because you may not arrest the decay, you may not stop it from happening, but you can still make a choice with what to do with your scraps. Do you throw them away, or do you turn them into compost?
Yeah, there you go.
That's
an incredible analogy.
And well, it's not original with me, so I'm not going to claim it there. But seriously, it's with our mental and emotional scraps. We can choose to just whine and moan and complain, or do what we can to use those and combine them with other things, and hopefully they will turn into good fodder for something better in the future.
Yeah, and I think too, there's a sense of allowing yourself to see those things, and allowing yourself to fall in love with a place, right? When I was a teenager, I don't know if I really allowed myself to fall in love with my home, and it maybe took me having my own child to allow myself to do that and to see that. So there's the combination of the realization of the good things around you, but there's also the sense that you need to give yourself the permission to truly see the beauty in anything you do. And that's not just the natural world, right? It can be your traditions of your home. It could be the elements of your home. And there are so many small things that you can fall in love with every day about your own place and the people there. But you do have to grant yourself permission to do that. And I think that's in part how I've managed to cultivate the gratitude you're talking about.
Well, you also have a Substack, which I will post the link to that in the notes, because I've enjoyed, as much as I enjoy your Twitter postings. I hate saying tweets, but yes.
I know, the tweets, the X's, whatever we call them now.
Right. That's right. It's not even Twitter anymore. That shows how up to date I am. But your Substack, you write regularly about just the things that you're thinking of. My guess is that some of this are those musings that you've written in the morning at times, or at least they feed into this. But I've collected several quotes from various Substack articles that you've written, and so.
All right, let's hear the best of. Let's hear the best of Old Hollow Tree Substack.
Of course, yeah. Well, and even your Substack name, or excuse me, your X/Twitter name, Old Hollow Tree, I love. But
well,
so one thing
there's a story behind that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but we can talk about that later if you want. But there's an old hollow tree at the edge of my parents' property that kind of serves as a gateway to the woods. It's on an old logging road, and so whenever I'd go into the woods, I'd throw a stone into that old hollow tree, and it's first in my boyhood, I'd say it was a game, but now it serves almost like a tally or a reflection or a meditation every time I do it. And I think that one day I'm probably going to outlive that tree. It is very old. it is very dead, and one day it will fall over. And I think that hopefully it'll happen close to the end of my life, and I can count the stones in that tree and figure out how many times I've gone into the forest around my home.
Wow. Well, you said, and this is back in October, as will be evident by the quote, but, quote, do not, and this is especially to husbands and dads, you say, do not shy away from the festive duties that can only be accomplished by a man, a son, a husband, a father. Do not diminish into the living room to watch the game as your wife adorns the hearth with tiny decorative gourds alone. Do not skip the corn maze, the apple orchard, or the pumpkin patch. These are the hunting grounds, and your quarry is mirth. What is the role? So here, that's the end of the quote. So that was beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm serious. It really was. I mean, it grabbed me, and I think it'll grab a lot of the people who listen, because there's a lot of wisdom packed into that.
Yeah.
So what is the role of a husband and father in cultivating mirth and joy in his home?
There is so much that only a husband or a father or a son can do, right? In that essay, which is called Husbands and Fathers, Now is the Time, and it's on my Substack from October 16th. There's a mischievous nature, I think, that, well, first off, this is multifaceted, right? I think that, first off, there is that kind of rakish, roguish, mischievous nature that a man has, when the holidays roll around, and it really starts at Halloween. and it goes into Thanksgiving, and it comes through Christmas and the solstice and all these things. And uh, you know, there's I think we can agree, and I think everyone. It's one of those things that it's really hard to talk about or write about, but I think everyone knows. And it's like that mystique of a father who gives you who offers you a knowing wink at the dining room table as he slips the dog, a scrap of food, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, plays a joke, or slips something into your stocking, or hides something on the Christmas tree, or plays a trick at Halloween. There is something about fathers that lends itself to this kind of roguish, mischievous elements surrounding the holidays that I think can only be accomplished by a father. And that might be because it is a juxtaposition of one's normal traditional role, right? No matter your politics or your religion or anything, I think there's a certain role of a father that, is a little bit more serious and a little bit more authoritative and disciplinarian and everything else. Maybe you can try to get away from that, but I think that it's ultimately something that is inherently true about fatherhood. And so when the holidays roll around and you juxtapose that role with outrageous joy, with mischief, with playing little jokes here and there, and sly winks to your wife near the hay bales and the corn mazes and all those things, you do embody something that is a little bit magical and powerful.
Yes.
So that's the first part, that piece, that sly knowing wink that only fathers can give at the dining room table is something I wrote about in that. But also, there's this other element of hospitality, right? We think so much of hospitality as a mother's role, as a wife's role, these things, but there is something inherently masculine about the concept of hospitality, whether you look way back into old Nordic myths, or something a little bit more recent like the Ghost of Christmas Present, with in the Christmas Carol, "Come in and know me better, man." There's this powerful, strong energy that husbands and fathers need to be embracing during this time. And it is that swinging the door nearly off its hinges to welcome people in. And, that is something that we are so close to losing.
Yes.
There's this incredible book by Washington Irving. It's short, and anyone can get it. It's on Project Gutenberg, so it's free. But it's called Old Christmas.
Yes.
And it's
I love
his
that.
travel journey. You love this book, okay?
Yes. It's
But
in his larger. It's also contained within his larger sketches.
Yes.
The sketches book. So go ahead.
But there's for your listeners who may not be as acquainted with it, we all know Washington Irving from Sleepy Hollow and all that. But this is a travel journal where he went to England for, just a little vacation during Christmas time, and he gets kind of swept away into. He meets up with a friend who sweeps him to his ancestral estate, where his kind of eccentric, noble, aristocratic father is very intent on keeping the old Christmas traditions alive, and who has gone into researching these things. But there's this point in the book that where I feel like that sense of hospitality, but also fatherhood, kind of gets it mingles a little bit, right? And he writes, "It was really delightful to see the old squire," that's the name of the father, this nobleman, The old squire, seated in his hereditary elbow chair by the hospitable fireside of his ancestors, and looking around him like the sun of a system, beaming warmth and gladness to every heart. Even the very dog that lay stretched at his feet, as he lazily shifted his position and yawned, would look fondly up in his master's face, wag his tail against the floor, and stretch himself again to sleep, confident of kindness and protection. There is an emanation from the heart and genuine hospitality which cannot be described, but is immediately felt, and puts the stranger at once at ease. I had not been seated many minutes by the comfortable hearth of the worthy cavalier before I found myself as much at home as if I had been one of the family. And that is something that I feel like every father and husband and son really needs to attempt to embody, right? That sense of cultivating your home in such a way that your strangers, your family, your neighbors feel at home around your table, near your hearth, in your hall, whatever you have, and it doesn't matter how humble your dwelling is, this applies to you. And, again, it can really be embodied by anyone of any gender, but I do feel like fathers are really at risk of losing this, right? There is this sense of, my wife wants to go to the corn maze. Oh, my wife wants to go get the Christmas tree. She wants to decorate the tree. And I don't know how we got there. I don't know if it was a gag in, popular media. I don't know if it was something from a previous generation. Like, I don't know where this disdain of, some holiday traditions was adopted. Mm-hmm. And it's specifically for men. I remember being in line at a grocery store and just chatting with the guy behind me and asked him what are you up to? What are you looking forward to? It's nearly Christmas. Oh, well, the wife wants to get a tree. You know how that is. Yeah, I know how that is. It's awesome. Yeah. That's right. The highlight of my year, man.
That's right.
And, I love going to the tree farm here with my wife and child and picking one out and arguing with her about one. And I love trying to get one that's a little bit too big and too tall and too fat for a house, and her reining me in every year. It's a pantomime that I play out, and I think it's important and fun and beautiful, and I like decorating the tree and decking the halls with boughs of holly, literally, and welcoming people into my home and having a big bonfire on the solstice and trying to embody that ghost of Christmas present, and just smoking meat and cooking food and all these things. And there is this kind of this sense of I don't want to be part of that. I'm gonna watch the game or whatever. And I don't know why. I don't know how we got there. But we got to push back against it, and I think that's important.
Well, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, we can't make everyone else. I mean, it would be impossible to make everyone else conform to what we're talking about. We can't make the broader culture stop doing what they're doing, but by God's grace, we can sure do it here.
Yeah.
I mean,
and you can model it.
It may fall away in other places, but when someone has, and when someone cultivates this in their own home, it is contagious as well. I mean, that's just like viewing the beauty out in the world. This is a type of beauty, and Irving talks about it throughout that. We read that story almost every year before Christmas of when he's staying there, because it just, and people can say, well, he's exaggerating. I don't care. I mean, whether he was or not, it does not matter, because he is speaking of something that tugs not at the mind, but at the soul.
Mm.
And people, beginning with our just our spouse and our children, our wives and our children, need this. They need a little bit of, they need a self-controlled, I could get in trouble for saying this, but they need a self-controlled version of Bacchus sometimes in the home.
There is, I know what you're saying. There is this sense of, I do feel like a father can embody that joyful abandon, that outrageous glee, that just incredible letting loose, around the holidays, without going overboard too, right?
Sure. I mean, he can't be a good husband. Cannot be a rake, and must not be a rake to every woman.
No.
Okay.
But
court his own wife. Hey, have you ever read G.K. Chesterton before? You ever?
I have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
So Man Alive is what I'm thinking of here.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
His character Man Alive, when he is just he dramatically proposes to his wife, but like she's not his wife in this fine restaurant. I mean, that stuck out to me so much the first time we read it, and so that's, now I've never done anything like that. But I have to say, there's been a few times in our marriage where Amanda, my wife, has said that I reminded her of Innocent Smith, and I can think of a few greater compliments that I've received.
No, I think if your listeners take away anything from this, I hope that the fathers out there in your parish and everyone else, is causing their wives to be a little wary around the mistletoe this year and say, hey, wait a minute, I know that look.
Yes. Yes. Long may it remain.
Here.
So,
good.
Another quote that you that you have regarding the importance of being deliberate is this, and I'll go ahead and preface it. This particular essay, you begin by talking about how your wife apologized for not getting more things done. And you told her that that's what this time of year is for. So here's the quote. The signals are all around us, imploring you to slow down and embrace the restful season between now, this is in November, but between now and the solstice, when the light starts to return, the frost on the grass, the trees ripped down to their fundamental structures, the animals bulking up before a long sleep. Yes, the geese sing their departure, but the owls and foxes at the woodline implore us to stay. Stay in the clear November nights, end quote.
Yeah.
Why do we, as people, insist on efficiency at all times?
Gosh.
And what is the answer for that?
I think you're getting to the heart of my writing here, and that is we really do need to attempt to embody the seasons a little bit more deliberately than we do now. As to why do we attempt to continue to embody that energy that we have in June all the way through December? Why do we do that? I don't know, Matt. I don't know if it's something that came after World War II, or if it's just a byproduct of electric light, or that we can stay up all night, or just modernity in general. I don't know why, but I don't think it's good. And I do think that as the seasons change, and you can really start feeling it around the autumn equinox, right? Autumn equinox, you've got 45 days to Halloween, and then from Halloween you got 45 days to Christmas, I think, yeah. Or the solstice too, and we do try to just keep that energy going all year long, and it's so bad for us. You can feel it. And maybe it's at work too, right? Like, we're at this time of year, you're probably not going to start a new project, right? That's like common sense. You're not going to start a new project on Monday because the 22nd is going to roll around and it's not going to be done, and then you're not going to get to it till like the 2nd of January. But more so than that, there is this sense of just, everything around you is slowing down, right? The insects have gone to sleep for the whole winter. Some of the geese, some of the animals are leaving, some are staying but hibernating, there's all that. But the trees too have just, like you read, stripped themselves down to the fundamental nature. And it is such a fundamental time of year. And I wrote about that back in November, and I said that November is the most fundamental month, right? Because everything just gets stripped down to its core. The trees do, the land does, and to a certain extent we do. It starts getting colder. The holidays are upon us. We are tasked with so much. We are just tasked with so much at a time when we really don't have a lot in us. And it's kind of a time of judgment in some regards. I think I wrote something to the effect of November is the month where you are stripped bare and put in a cloudless field, and you are illuminated by cold starlight, and maybe you are found wanting. Maybe you're found sufficient. I don't know.
Right.
And I think that's what this time of year does to us. It causes us to consider what is at our core, what is fundamental, what is actually important to us, and attempt to embody that. And I think that when we try to act like it's spring or summer, try to have that same energy, I think that's when people get sad and sick.
Well, for us here, at our church in Alabama, we try to embody the church calendar, and right now is the season of Advent, which traditionally is not a season of giving oneself all out to celebration, but it's a time of preparation, but also of even penitence. And I say that not to cast a dim shadow on everything, but with what you were talking about, with the leaves stripped bare, and with there is a type of barrenness that begins, and that for at least again, when I think of this, it correlates well with that time where one is preparing for this wonderful feast that's coming up. Mm-hmm. But beforehand, there is opportunity to, at a more slower pace, think about and ponder what you really don't have the time or ability to think about in August or in June or May, because you have to start kicking back up and getting things going. So the natural season and the church calendar in this respect, at least, have some really strong overlap that I've not thought about that before, but this does jump out to me as you were describing again just what goes on in nature itself, in creation. So
absolutely.
So you talk in one of your articles about the New England custom of putting candles in the window after Halloween.
Yeah.
So what is that for? What is the? I mean, because I can remember my mother. We had an electric candle set that she used to put in the windows after Thanksgiving. So I did not know that was a New England custom. What is that for? What does it communicate? Talk about that particular
Oh yeah.
tradition.
Well, uh, this is a point of contention with some historians, right? Some people tell you that it, it was a way for persecuted, I think persecuted Catholics to signify a safe place for each other. I don't know the veracity of that, but um, this for me and what I wrote about, it's they really do. After Halloween, it is just so dark, right? And it's dark because the year is dying, but also we do that terrible thing where we're shifting the clocks back and everything on November 4th we do that, and so it's just dark by like 5:30 at that point. So the village where I live, they put the candles in their windows about that time of the year. And I wrote that, they really do serve as beacons for friends and neighbors, no matter what the origin of these are. And I personally think it's just, the origin of this is that it is an act of rebellion, right? They welcome everybody to knock and check in as they make their way home, but it's not just some precious or posh thing, to put candles in your, New England colonial. I think that it's in some ways an act of defiance against the encroaching dark. As the sun retreats far too early, you and your home become the beacon. And that signals to your friends and neighbors that they're going to make it, and you're going to make it, and it's going to be okay. It's a promise.
Yes. A symbol of hope is what I'm hearing.
I think so. And, there's the tangible element of, just lighting up a village and making it more welcoming, but I do think that it's more symbolic than that.
What are traditions in the Anderson household that you and your family really enjoy? So, and just throughout the year, what are the 3 top things that you look forward to? So you told us about getting the Christmas tree.
Oh, yeah.
So that, and here I'm not talking about, Christmas, Thanksgiving. Yes, those are wonderful. But what are the things that specifically that you all do that you just look forward to at whatever time of the year? 3 things.
Yeah. Oh, man. So 2 are kind of going to be the same answer. We always have a big bonfire on the solstice. And that's, part of that is because my wife and I both love history. We love, we're both of European descent. I think a lot about my Celtic ancestry and the Germanic ancestry and all that. And so we think about all those really old traditions surrounding the solstices. And for us, in the summer, June 21st there, the summer solstice, you get, the year is now going on the downhill. So we light a huge bonfire and have some kind of feast, right? We always have usually smoke a brisket or a pork shoulder or something like that to, kind of say goodbye to the light and know that we're now on the downhill. Or I guess it's more like walking uphill, right?
Right.
You're walking up to the winter solstice at the point. The days are getting darker. Everyone loves saying that, oh, the summer solstice, the summer's finally here, right? Finally, it's here. Like, well, kind of. It's actually halfway done.
Right.
So at that point, we have a fire with our family to kind of say goodbye and to know that we're now kind of entering the indoor time of the year, in some regards, right? It's you still got plenty of summer left, but you're on the long march to winter at that point.
Right.
And likewise, we have a big bonfire on the winter solstice. We're gonna have it on this upcoming Friday, actually, the 22nd, with our friends and neighbors and family to celebrate the days getting longer. And that is I don't know how it is in Alabama, but here, that is a point of celebration because it is a tangible thing that you can measure, right? But at this point, the sun is set at 4 o'clock. And, come the 23rd, the 24th, the 25th, every day you're getting another minute. Every day you're getting a few more seconds of that daylight until, and you're on the downhill. You're walking downhill at that point. It's just the year feels like a hike sometimes, and right now we are on the approach to the summit, and we are about to come back down, and it feels so good. I keep telling my wife that if I can remain holly and jolly until the solstice, I'm gonna make it.
I heard something yesterday that really, it was a podcast about Christmas celebration, and the man said that historically you can trace the further north a culture is in the northern hemisphere, the stronger their Christmas celebration will be.
That makes a lot of sense, right? Whether it's some of, and maybe it's some of that's from some of those pre-Christian traditions like the Yule log and the boar's head and all those things that Washington Irving writes about, that we still hold on to, which are good, right? Those are good things because you're still celebrating that light coming back, and maybe you're celebrating the promise of Christ returning or being born or anything. It doesn't really. There's just so much good about that time of year. So yeah, for us, the tradition is having a huge bonfire and a feast. And so on the 22nd, we'll be sledding, we'll be feasting, we'll be having a bonfire out there, and it's going to be good. The other one, the third one, jack-o'-lanterns are so important to my family. And again, it all comes back to light, right? It's when Halloween rolls around, you are halfway. You look at a calendar, you're halfway between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice. And so that point is another marker of the year where you need to be bringing the light into your home, right? It's getting darker.
Right.
It is dark. It is getting darker, and you need to be lighting the way, right? And part of that is doing this incredibly eccentric thing, this amazing tradition that, I think some Irish immigrants brought over to Canada, and then it was adopted in New England, and we put candles and pumpkins, and it's just this insane thing that we do that everyone agrees is a good thing, and it is just, again, so eccentric and joyful and beautiful at a time of year that is not joyful and beautiful, right? It is getting darker. The trees are losing their leaves. It's getting colder. You have to be ready. Your wood has to be stacked. And yet, we put a candle in a gourd. And it is just so absurd and beautiful, and I love it. I love that juxtaposition between the dark and the light, the joy and the sorrow, the life and the death of the year, and it is just so good to do that thing. Yes. And it also has the other benefit of making the children happy, and that's ultimately what it all comes down to. Is I love this dark half of the year. That really kicks off at Halloween, because you get to beat it back, right? As a husband, as a father, as a mother, it doesn't matter. Like, you get to be there and let the children know that it's going to be okay.
That's
like,
right.
Yeah, it's darker. Yeah, it's colder. Yeah, the bills are piling up. Like, it's a more stressful time of year. But at Halloween, at Christmas, we're just constantly bringing the outside in. We're bringing light outside. We're doing all these things that brighten up our halls and our hearth and our home and the outside and the inside. And it just, all of it feels like an incredible act of rebellion to me. And it's just, again, what you said earlier, that incredible, hopeful defiance.
Yes.
And so those are the three big ones. Saying goodbye to the light, welcoming the light back in, and really just being defiant against the dark.
We can't stop the dark from coming.
No.
But we can, as you just said, we can give ourselves to supporting the light that we have access to.
And again, these are all incredibly, and the way I frame these things, they're tangible. In some ways, they're very secular. But I hope that, your listeners, your parish, all that, can see the reflection of it in their own faith. And so much of what we do with these old customs is reflected in your faith, too.
Yes.
And it's just such an easy allegory to make.
Well, this has been really fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I wish we had a lot more time than we do. But Ryan, I appreciate you taking time to talk this morning. And so I will certainly, I encourage people to, if they're on Twitter, to follow you on Twitter or X. Excuse me. I'm going to start remembering that. And then your Substack is Echoes from an Old Hollow Tree.
Yeah.
And his most recent one is on snow days, and it probably put into words why. It explained why I personally love snow so much, but never fully was able to express it. So, Ryan, thank you very much for joining us today.
Matthew, thanks so much. It was a joy.
The Good Life podcast is a ministry of Trinity Reformed Church in Huntsville, Alabama. If you like this podcast, you might enjoy one of our other podcasts, Got a Minute, featuring Larson Hicks and Rich Lusk. Theology, philosophy, economics, politics, and more for normal people.